Shaitan exploits and distorts the legitimate into the illegitimate. Now, Shaitan sometimes uses people who will listen to him to complete his task. So who did Shaitan use to complete his task of bringing and popularizing and formulating numerology into the system that we know now? This was a figure by the name of Pythagoras. Many of us will know him if we study mathematics in school. His name is mentioned frequently. But what many don't know is Pythagoras also had a very strong belief in the occult and a desire to master its influences and use them for his own life and the life of others. Pythagoras was the first one to give numerology a formulated system. In the year 581 BC, roughly some 2,600 years ago, he left his home country of Greece and went to study in schools as far afield as Phoenicia, Babylon, as well as Egypt. Now this is a very important point. The fact that Pythagoras went and studied mathematics and other things in Phoenicia as well as Babylon. In 581 BC, when he went there, Pythagoras would have found that the Jews had already been learning magic from the Babylonians, and that they were distilling and using magic themselves. So Pythagoras, by going to Babylon and learning from the source that the children of Israel were using to learn the magic that they would later use, he himself was taking from polluted sources. Because as we remember when speaking on our topic of magic not long ago, after 596 BC, the Jews had been in captivity in Babylon. And 581 BC was not long after the event, so the Jews were still in captivity in Babylon. And Pythagoras would have been there in the presence of them, as well as the Babylonians, learning their knowledge. Therefore, he would have seen and perhaps been able to get a first-hand look at the distillation of magic by the children of Israel, therefore taking from a polluted source from the very start. Listen to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the children of Israel and their use of the magic. It is a very powerful ayah. It has been quoted numerous times, and at each time it takes on a stronger meaning and it retains its power. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about them, وَاتَّبَعُوا مَا تَتْلُو الشَّيَاطِينُ عَلَى مُلْكِ سُلَيْمَانَ وَمَا كَفَرَ سُلَيْمَانُ وَلَكِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ كَفَرُوا يُعَلِّمُونَ النَّاسَ السِّحْرَ وَمَا أُنزِلَ على الملكين ببابل هاروت وماروت وما يعلمان من أحد حتى يقولا إنما نحن فتنة فلا تكفر فيتعلمون منهما ما يفرقون به بين المرء وزوجه وما هم بضارين به من أحد إلا بإذن الله ويتعلمون ما يضرهم ولا ينفعهم ولقد علموا لمن اشتراه ما له في الآخرة من خلاق. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the children of Israel during their captivity in Babylon and their time, he says, they followed what the demons gave out in the time of Suleiman. Suleiman did not disbelieve, but it was the demons that disbelieved, teaching human beings magic and such things that came down to Babylon to the two angels, Harut and Marut. But neither of them taught anyone until they had said, we are only for a test, so do not disbelieve. And from these two, people learned that which could separate a man from his wife, but they could not harm anyone except by the leave of Allah. And they learned that which harms them and does not benefit them. And they knew that those who purchase it would have no share in the hereafter. This is taken from Surah Al-Baqarah, the second surah, ayah 102. Now, what that tells us is the sources that the children of Israel took from, as well as Pythagoras while on his visit to Babylon and learning those sciences, were polluted, false, and harmful, and represented the harbinger of his destruction. When Pythagoras returned to Greece in the year 545 BC, at the age of 52 years old, he opened his own university. His teaching spread far from Greece, and soon universities began to be established in such places as Croatia, which was then a Greek colony, and southern Italy. These institutions were places where the students could specialize in philosophy, music, mathematics, culture, and metaphysics. It was his greatest achievement that Pythagoras was finally able to fully separate numerology from mathematics and focus on its occultic power, in effect becoming the world's first numerologist. Pythagoras also brought his unique understanding of the occultic power of numbers into music, formulating methods where music could be used to control the mind of the listener. So this is very important information for us to take in mind. So Pythagoras is the true master, if we want to be technical and attribute numerology being formulated into a cogent system. He was the true founder, in a sense, of numerology as we know it today. Now the next question that comes to our mind is, how does numerology work? How does it work? Pythagoras, again, is the source of how numerology works. His formulations are considered the most authoritative. And what he did is he organized numbers into two categories: odd and even. The odd numbers were thought to be masculine and also the most powerful, whereas the even numbers were the feminine and more inferior or weaker numbers. These numbers that Pythagoras used, and those who would follow him after, these numbers would be added in combinations. And what they would do is take numbers between 1 to 9. And each number had a certain power that was represented. Each number, from 1 to 9. And this number, every single person would be held to have this particular number, which is called a prime number. Now, in addition to these numbers, there are different numbers that represent different phases of people's lives. There are people who have a prime number that represents their actual personality, their characteristics, and their behavior. In addition to that, there is also their love number or their life number, which is added by divining and taking the month, day, and year that a person was born and adding them together until they receive an either small double-digit number between 11 and 22 or a single-digit number, which will explain their life match. That particular love or life match, they must find someone else that has that exact life match, or perhaps someone that has a number similar or compatible with theirs. If they do not, it is believed by Pythagoras and other numerologists that there will be grave consequences for this. There are also occupational numbers. There are people who their prime number will indicate and influence what type of life that they will lead. Thus, there are some people who their prime number, for example, if we said it was 5 and said that people with a prime number of 5, for example,